that perhaps he will not be as forceful an advocate for human rights and democracy and our foreign policy as I would wish to see. Some of those were alleviated by our conversations. Some are an open question because he doesn't have a record of public diplomacy. But I weighed those with a number of other issues. It was a close call. It was, I believe that the choice I made was the right one. We spent a lot of time thinking about it and going over all his answers and his transcripts from the hearing, and I ended up doing what I believe is the right choice. Although it was a tough one for I think a number of members on the committee.
What's the metric that you look at to see if you're actually going to say, okay, I did the right thing, or I did the wrong thing to get down the road?
Well, ultimately, obviously, his performance as Secretary of State, and my hope is that he will be the best Secretary of State we've ever had. And I said that in the statement I wrote today, and I said that in our conversation. I believe he's going to have more influence than any Secretary of State potentially in recent memory.
So, do you think he'll be tough on Russia?
Well, again, I mean, his views, he has stated them. He said he recognizes that Russia's an autocratic government and that Vladimir Putin is an autocrat. It remains to be seen. It's one of the things that I was concerned about, some of his answers on the sanctions and so forth. I was pleased with some of his other answers about defensive weaponry to Ukraine, and so, as I said, it was a close call and a difficult choice.
What were the other issues that you were weighing as you made this decision? You said you weighed all of your concerns against other issues.
I mean, the one I stated that really come to light is with an incredible amount of uncertainty in the world about the direction of America's foreign policy, I think it would be damaging to our national interest to have a protracted, unnecessarily protracted and controversial Secretary of State nomination. At this point, I think it's important to have that position filled and to ensure that we can get to work. And just in the last few days, the president has announced.
Did the Trump team pressure you?
Well, let me finish the answer. I believe the administration's announced in recent days that there are going to be a series of foreign leaders, which he's going to be visiting with, and I think it's important to have the Department of State fully functional for that. You ask about the administration. I got to say, guys, and they've been incredibly professional in my interaction with them, responsive, respectful. I mean, they did what I would do if I were president and wanted to get my nominee through. You try to provide information and nudge people in the right direction, but it was all very respectful. I have to be fair about that.
What was the 90-minute meeting like last week?
Well, I'm not going to discuss. I'm not going to discuss meetings or anything of that nature.
Were you
I
able
acknowledge
to get
that
any
I had.
commitments were you able to get any commitments from him?
Yeah, I'm not going to talk about the details of that conversation. We had a hearing. You heard his answers. His questions in writing are available as well. But I believe. But this was never about any sort of political horse trading. It was about making the right choice. And I spent I believe more time on this nomination than anything else I've ever done from a nominee point of view in the 6 years and a month that I've been a senator.
Senator, Donald Trump has already announced, the Trump administration has announced several efforts on Russia. They've suggested they might want to trade, lifting some sanctions for arms reduction, and also today Sean Spicer suggested that the U.S. would be open to going on joint airstrikes with Russia in Syria. What do you make of these announcements so far, these policy announcements?
Well, if that's what they're considering, I imagine there'll be a vibrant and robust debate within the administration about whether this is the right way forward. I have reservations about both of those. In fact, I think it would be a mistake to lift sanctions unless the conditions attached to those sanctions are met. And that was one of the things that troubled me about his answers. But ultimately, we'll see what direction they decide to go. At this point, our hope is to influence them in the right direction. And if they don't make the right choice, then we'll oppose it. But I'll reserve judgment until they actually take action.
How do you grade the first 72 hours of the Trump administration? Kellyanne Conway, for example, told Chuck Todd this weekend that they have alternative facts. What's your evaluation of that?
Of what?
They have alternative facts.
Well, guys, you asked me to grade it. What do you want me to compare it to? I mean, this is
A through F.
Well, look, I don't think I'm breaking any news here to say that President Trump is an unorthodox political figure. I saw it firsthand in a campaign, but that's who the American people chose. And now I'm viewing this as an American, not as a Republican. I want him to succeed because it's good for our country if he succeeds, and he deserves the chance to succeed. And so I don't know how to grade the first 72 hours.
But during the campaign, you expressed significant reservations about him, his fitness to be commander-in-chief.
Because I was running against him.
Well, even afterwards, do you feel confident, fully confident in him and his capabilities, commander-in-chief?
But here's the thing. In a campaign, you're providing options to voters, and you're making those arguments. He was elected. He won. Whether people like it or not, whether Madonna's pleased with it or not, he's the president of the United States, and he won an election. And now we need to give him a chance to be successful. If he's not successful, then 4 years from now, voters will have a chance to pronounce themselves. If he takes policy measures that I disagree with, I'll do what I can as a senator to either stop them or condemn them. And when he does things that are good, I'll be there to support them. But I think he deserves a chance to be successful.
But
Do you
think
have
he'll
any
keep the country
concerns
safe?
about the,
Again, I want him to be successful, and that's about keeping our country safe is a critical component of that. And he's chosen, in fairness, some really good people to serve on his national security team. You see that in Congressman Pompeo, who in about an hour and a half will be our new CIA director. You see that in General Mattis, who's now our defense Secretary of Defense. So you know, I'm pleased with much of the team he's put around him, and I'm excited about the opportunities they have before them to do good things for our country.
do you have any concerns about the terrorist positions for the Western Hemisphere, for example, Venezuela, Colombia, Cuba?
No, you know, the Cuba aspect was discussed at the hearing, and I was satisfied with his answers. We discussed Venezuela privately, and I was satisfied that he understands. He actually has a pretty good understanding of the political situation in Venezuela, having interacted in business there in a way that didn't turn out very positively. So I think that he's fully aware of the nature of the Maduro regime, which of course is the successor to the Chavez regime that he dealt with.
About Colombia peace process?
We talked about that. I made him aware of my concerns about the peace process and the direction that it's going and the role of USAID. He certainly didn't express anything to me that would be concerning. And in fact, if I'm not mistaken, I believe at some point in the last day or so, he may have publicly expressed a desire to kind of reevaluate the U.S.'s role in Plan Colombia.
Did he ever call Putin a war criminal in your discussions with him?
Well, again, I mean, that question was more fundamental to whether or not the Secretary of State's role is to call things human rights violations. And obviously I wasn't happy with the answer he gave at the hearing. He didn't have to maybe answer it directly the way I would have preferred, but I wasn't pleased with the answer he gave. And it's one of the things that I was concerned about, and it was part of my deliberation.
You came out of that hearing, though, and you said that you want a Secretary of State who has moral clarity, and he did not have moral clarity at the time. Do you believe that he has moral clarity now?
I believe that he obviously shares the same values that human rights are important, that democracy is important to promote and defend. My question is whether there'll be priorities for him as Secretary of State. And you know, that's a judgment call because he doesn't have a record of public office. So in the end, you know, I weighed that against the other factors that I've just outlined with you, and now we're going to do everything we can to hopefully make him successful and to encourage him in that direction.
Now that you're
Senator-
voting for him, do you think that it'll be tough for some of your colleagues who look at him so skeptically to say, okay, come along, you know, he's doing the right thing, or we've confirmed him, he is the Secretary of State?
I don't understand the
Well,
question.
the idea that there has been so much skepticism about him, even from yourself, that it'll be hard for some folks to come along with him once he is Secretary of State. Say, okay, he has these positions. Granted, you might have to call him out on certain things if it's things that he deviates from. But the idea that he starts kind of at a deficit.
No, I don't necessarily see it that way. You know, I voted for John Kerry to be Secretary of State and almost immediately began to disagree on many of his decisions. So I think one thing is the standard that must be met in order to be confirmed, and the other is our role to hold accountable members of the cabinet and the administration for the decisions that they make, and I feel that's how he was judged.
Senator Reince Priebus over the weekend alluded to an attempt on the part of the administration to codify DACA. So they want to ask Congress to let the Dreamers stay. Have they talked to you about that, and could you support that effort?
Yeah, I haven't had that discussion with him, and obviously before I can tell you what my position would be on a particular measure, I'd have to see the details of it. It's an issue they know they'll have to confront, but I have not had a recent conversation with them about that.
What is your broad stance right now on whether the Dreamers should be allowed?
I think ultimately the executive order is unconstitutional and will have to be replaced, ideally by a legislative measure that happens in conjunction with some other measures that ensure that our immigration laws are being enforced and that we never find ourselves in this position again. But
Do you think they should be deported?
well, I certainly think that the law needs to be enforced. In the case of young people that are in this country, there's a broad consensus that we want to find a way for people that were brought here as very young children, through no fault of their own, find themselves here illegally, to be able to incorporate themselves into American life. But it has to be done in a way that does not create an incentive for others to do that in the future. And that's always been the challenge with that issue.
Would you have concerns that John Bolton is picked as the Deputy Secretary of State?
I like like Ambassador Bolton. I have many reviews. Obviously, like any other nominee, we go through that process. These are important positions.
How about the other executive orders that President Trump has signed in the last 36 hours? Mexico City law,
Agree with that.
TPP. You know, just
Well, the
overall.
TPP, listen, guys, the TPP was going to die because both of the two leading candidates for president were against it. So I don't know why that's shocking or surprising to anybody. Are there concerns about our geopolitical consequences of that in Asia and how the Chinese could use that to their advantage? Sure. But I mean, he said he wasn't in favor of it. He won the election, and his opponent wasn't in favor of it, Secretary Clinton. So either way, no matter who won, TPP was gone. So it's just the way it is.
And more broadly, though, you think he's exercising executive power in the way that a president should?
Oh, I hope he'll do some more of it in terms of reversing some of the illegal and unconstitutional executive orders that President Obama put in place. All right, guys.
Thank you.